The gun touched Nora Hale's forehead before she could stop shaking. It was black, heavy, cold enough to feel alive. The man holding it stood in the doorway of a laundry room, with rain on his black suit and death in his pale gray eyes. Behind him, armed men filled the aisles between humming washers, their weapons raised over rows of spinning glass doors. Nora knelt on the wet tile with a 4-year-old girl locked against her chest. The child had not made a sound through the crash, the gunfire, the running, or the blood on her white coat. She had only clutched Nora's blue work apron with both tiny fists. "Give me my daughter," the man said. His voice was soft. That made it worse. Nora tightened one arm around the child. "She ran to me. You touched her. I saved her." The gun pressed harder. Nora closed her eyes. Then the child moved. One small hand slipped from Nora's apron and reached toward the gun. "Don't," the little girl whispered. The entire laundry stopped breathing. The man froze. The girl turned her tear-streaked face up to him and spoke again, the first real words anyone in his house had heard from her in a year. "Don't shoot, Mama." The gun lowered 1 inch. Then another. The most dangerous man in the city stared at Nora as if she had just opened a locked grave. 3 minutes earlier, Nora Hale had been counting quarters under the flickering sign of Bellamy Wash and Fold. The sign outside buzzed in the rain, half the letters dead. Bellamy Wash was open 24 hours because people with clean lives did not understand how often dirty ones needed washing at 3 in the morning. Nora worked the night shift alone. She liked it that way. No customers asking why she looked tired. No manager reminding her to smile. No men staring too long while she folded other people's sheets. Just washers, dryers, steam, and the steady rhythm of work. She had been mending the torn cuff of a rich man's black wool coat when thunder rolled over the block. Her needle paused. The coat was too fine for this neighborhood. Italian fabric. Hand-finished seams. A hidden label stitched inside the lining with initials instead of name. DB. People like that did not come to Bellamy, Washington. Their drivers did. Nora pushed the coat aside and counted the cash drawer again. $83. Enough to keep the lights on at her rooming house for 1 more week if Mrs. Pike did not raise the rent again. Her mother would have told her to stop worrying. Her mother had said a lot of hopeful things before the hospital took her breath, then her apartment, then everything she had left behind except a sewing tin and a debt Nora could not outrun. The bell over the front door gave 1 weak jingle. Nora looked up. No one entered. Outside, headlights skidded across the rain-slick glass. Then something hit the curb with a force that shook the dryers. Nora dropped the quarters. A black SUV spun into the street outside the laundry, its side crumpled inward. A second vehicle slammed it again, pushing it toward the row of parking meters. Men in dark coats poured out through the rain. Gunfire cracked. Not movie gunfire. Not distant. Real gunfire, flat and ugly, breaking windows 2 doors down. Nora threw herself behind the folding counter. A stack of clean towels spilled over her shoulder. She should have stayed down. She should have crawled to the back exit and run. Then the rear door of the black SUV opened. A little girl fell out onto the wet street. She was tiny, 4, maybe 5. Her white coat was soaked through. One patent leather shoe was missing. She held a cloth rabbit by one ear and stood in the rain without screaming while a man turned his weapon toward her. Nora did not think. Thinking was for people with time. She grabbed the nearest rolling laundry cart, the big steel kind with canvas sides and a bent front wheel, and shoved it hard through the open doorway. The cart hit the man at the knees. His shot went wild, cracking the glass above Nora's head. Nora ran straight into the rain. "Move!" The child did not move. Of course she did not. She was frozen so completely that even fear had failed her. Nora scooped her up with one arm. The girl weighed nothing. A bundle of wet wool and bones and terror. Nora shoved the cart between them and the gunman, then kicked the front wheel sideways. The car tipped, canvas bag first, spilling white towels across the sidewalk like a sudden wall. Another shot tore through the laundry sign. Nora ran. The girl clung to her apron. Not her neck, not her shirt, the apron. Nora burst back into Bellamy Wash and slammed the glass door. The lock was a flimsy thing meant to keep out drunk college kids, not armed men. She dragged a steel garment rack across the entrance and hooked its wheel under the door handle. The child still had not cried. "Hey," Nora whispered. "Look at me." Huge brown eyes lifted to hers. "I'm Nora. We're going to hide." No answer. "That's fine. You don't have to talk." A body struck the door from outside. The rack buckled. Nora grabbed the child and ran past the washers, past the dryers, past the sign that said employees only. In the back room, industrial steam rose from the pressing station. Blue plastic laundry bags hung from hooks. A row of drying racks formed a narrow maze around the old service corridor. Nora shoved the child behind a stack of folded hotel sheets. "Stay under this." The girl caught her apron again. Nora swallowed. I know. But if they see both of us standing, we both lose. Hold the rabbit. Hold your breath if you can." The girl stared. Nora pulled off her own cardigan, wrapped it around the child, then tipped a basket of towels over the hiding place. From the outside, it looked like another messy pile in a failing laundry. The front door gave way. Boots moved through the shop. Nora reached for the nearest thing her hand knew. A steam iron. It was old, heavy, and hot enough to take wrinkles out of hotel linen in one pass. The first gunman came through the plastic curtain. Nora swung the iron with both hands. It hit his wrist with a dull crack. His weapon clattered under the folding table. He cursed and grabbed for her. Nora yanked the steam lever and drove a white blast into his face. He screamed. She kicked his knee. He went down into a bin of damp uniforms. The second man reached the doorway before she could run. Then the entire front of the shop erupted with a different kind of violence. Short commands, controlled shots, glass breaking, men falling. Nora backed toward the towel pile, holding the iron like a weapon and hating that her hands knew how to shake only after the danger had already arrived. The plastic curtain moved. A man stepped through. Not the shooter. Worse. He wore a black suit that had been cut for his body and ruined by rain. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and beautiful in the way storms were beautiful from a locked room. His black hair was wet, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his eyes pale enough to look almost silver beneath the fluorescent light. Dante Bellandi. Nora did not know his name yet. She knew power when it entered a room. His gaze moved once. The burned man on the floor. The missing gun. The tipped towel pile. Nora with the iron. His weapon rose. Where is she? Nora could barely speak. Ooh. The gun found her forehead. Do not lie to me. The towel pile shifted. Nora's heart stopped. The little girl crawled out from under the sheets, still wrapped in Nora's cardigan, still clutching the rabbit. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks. Her eyes locked on the man with the gun. Dante's face changed. Not softened. Cracked. Ivy. The girl flinched at her own name, but she did not go to him. She ran to Nora instead and buried her face in the blue apron. That was when his gun pressed harder. That was when Nora shut her eyes. That was when Ivy Bellandi spoke for the first time since her mother died. Don't shoot, Mama. The back room filled with men who did not dare move. Dante Bellandi lowered his gun. It cost him something. Nora saw it. The slight tremor in his wrist. The way his throat worked once, as if he had swallowed glass. The way every armed man behind him stared because their boss had done something none of them expected. He had raised a weapon, and then he had put it down. Dante crouched slowly, ignoring the wet tile beneath his $1,000 shoes. Ivy, he said. His voice had lost all the steel. The child tightened her grip on Nora's apron. Dante's eyes flicked to the cloth. It was a cheap apron, faded from detergent, printed with Bellamy wash and fold in peeling white letters. One pocket had torn open. Nora had mended it with yellow thread because it was all she had left in the tin. Ivy clung to it as if it were a lifeline. She is not your mother, Dante said softly. Ivy's lower lip trembled. Nora hated him for saying it. Hated that he was right. Hated that the child looked as if the words had slapped her. She knows, Nora said. The pale eyes lifted to her. You do not speak for my daughter. No, but I know what scared children do when they find one safe thing. One of the men behind Dante shifted. Boss, we need to move. Orloff's second car got away. Dante stood. The father vanished behind the king. Bring them. Nora's stomach dropped. No. The word came out before fear could stop it. The men looked at her as if she had insulted a loaded machine. Dante turned. No. Nora put both arms around Ivy. I saved her. I didn't steal her. I didn't plan this. You can't just take me. I can. Then you're no better than the men outside. The room went silent. Dante stepped close enough that Nora could smell rain, smoke, and something expensive under both. The men outside shot through my car to reach a child. One of them escaped. If I leave you here, he will come back before sunrise. If I let you walk away, he will find you in whatever room you rent and use pieces of you to ask what my daughter said. Nora's mouth went dry. I don't know anything. You know, she spoke. His eyes moved to Ivy. And right now, that may be the most dangerous thing in New York. Ivy looked up at Nora, silent again, fingers locked in the apron. Nora wanted to run. There was nowhere to run that did not end with the child being pulled from her arms. If I go, she said, you do not tell her I'm her mother. Dante's expression hardened. Careful. No, you be careful. She lost her mother. Whatever happened tonight knocked something loose in her. If you let her build that on a lie, you will break her again. A man behind Dante drew in a breath. Dante did not look away from Nora. Your name? Nora Hale. Nora Hale, he repeated, as if placing her somewhere in his mind. You are under my protection until I find a man who sold my daughter's route. And after, if you still want to leave, you leave. Nora did not believe him, but she believed the girl trembling against her. So when Dante Belandi's men cleared the back alley and brought a black armored car to the laundry's broken door, Nora climbed in with Ivy in her lap, her blue work apron still clenched in the child's fists. The Belandi safe house did not look like a house. It had once been a textile mill on the edge of the Hudson, all red brick, black windows, and iron catwalks over water dark enough to swallow headlights. Someone had turned the upper floors into a residence without removing the old bones of the place. Steel beams crossed above Italian leather furniture. Wide windows looked over the river. Security doors slid silently inside exposed brick walls. It was beautiful. It was also a fortress pretending not to be one. Dante carried Ivy inside himself. She had fallen asleep halfway there, her fingers still tangled in Nora's apron. When Dante tried to ease the cloth from her hand, Ivy whimpered without waking. Nora untied the apron. Take it, she said. Dante stared at her. She needs it more than I do. He took the apron as if she had handed him something sacred. An older woman with silver hair waited near the elevator. She wore a black dress and no expression. Mrs. Vale, Dante said. East room. Warm bath. Pediatrician on secure call. The woman nodded once, then looked at Nora. In her adjoining room. Nora stiffened. I'm not a guest. No, Dante said. You are a target. That is not better. For the first time, something almost like humor touched his mouth. It died quickly. Mrs. Vale led them up 2 floors. Ivy woke when Nora tried to step away from the bath. The child made no sound, but her whole body went rigid. I'll stay, Nora said. The bathwater turned gray from street rain. Nora washed glass dust from Ivy's hair, cleaned a scrape on her knee, and wrapped her in a soft towel bigger than the child herself. Ivy never spoke again that night. But when Nora dressed her in borrowed pajamas, the little girl pointed to the blue apron lying on a chair. You want it? Ivy nodded. Nora tied it over the pajamas. It nearly reached the child's ankles. Ivy fell asleep with one hand in the pocket Nora had mended with yellow thread. Only then did Nora step into the hall. Dante waited there. He had changed into a black shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms. Rainwater no longer softened him. He looked carved again. Hard, controlled, untouchable. But his eyes were on the closed bedroom door. How long? Nora asked. How long what? Since she spoke. His jaw tightened. 1 year for days. Her mother, killed in front of her. Nora closed her eyes briefly. I'm sorry. Do not say that like it helps. She looked at him. It doesn't help. It is still true. He studied her for a long moment. She called you Mama. She called the apron safe. You are very sure of that. I worked in a shelter laundry before Bellamy. Kids attached to smells. Fabric. Routines. A blanket washed the right way can calm a child faster than a room full of adults explaining safety. Dante's gaze moved down to her hands. They were red from detergent, nicked from needlework, and shaking. You have dealt with frightened children. I've been one. Something passed between them then. Not trust, not softness, recognition. He looked away first. My daughter has had doctors, therapists, specialists flown from 3 countries. Maybe she didn't need another stranger asking her to perform grief correctly. His eyes cut back. Nora held her ground, though her heart was loud enough to embarrass her. You speak to me as if you do not know what I am. I know what you are. Do you? A father who almost shot the first person his daughter trusted. The silence after that was dangerous. Then Dante stepped closer. I have killed men for less. I believe you. And still, you lowered the gun. For 1 second, his face stripped bare. Then he turned away. Sleep while you can, Miss Hale. Morning will make everything uglier. Morning made it expensive first. Nora woke in a room with linen sheets, black river views, and a camera in the corner that had been politely covered with a folded towel. Someone had left clothes on a chair. Plain jeans, a gray sweater, thick socks, no design of tags, no satin costume. That surprised her more than the guards outside the door. Ivy was in the next room with Mrs. Vale, sitting cross-legged on the floor, while Enzo Ricci, Dante's underboss, watched from a respectful distance. Enzo was built like a cathedral door and had the kindest eyes Nora had seen in the building. Ivy wore the blue apron over her sweater. Nora's throat tightened. At breakfast, Dante sat at the far end of a long steel table that had once belonged to the mill floor. He read reports from a tablet, while men came and went with quiet urgency. Ivy climbed into the chair beside Nora. Not beside Dante. Nora saw the pain cross his face before he buried it. Mrs. Vale placed oatmeal, berries, toast, and tea in front of them. Ivy touched none of it. Nora reached for the toast, tore it into small squares, and set one on the edge of Ivy's plate. No one eats a whole triangle on a bad morning, she said softly. That's too much commitment. Ivy looked at the toast. Then she ate one square. Dante stopped reading. Nora pretended not to notice. Ivy ate another. Enzo looked at the ceiling as if it had suddenly become fascinating. Dante said, she has not eaten breakfast without a nurse counting bites in months. Nora kept her voice low. Then stopped making breakfast a test. Mrs. Vale made a small sound near the stove. Dante heard it. Do you find something amusing? No, sir. Nora absolutely did not look at Enzo. Dante set the tablet down. I have questions. So do I, Nora said. One dark brow lifted. You first, she said, since you have the building full of guns. Who knew you were at Bellamy Wash last night? Every customer who dropped off pants with impossible stains. Names. Cash business. Half fake names. One man calls himself Mr. Tuesday because he comes on Thursdays. Enzo coughed into his fist. Dante did not smile. Did anyone ask about my coat? Nora blinked. The black wool one? You saw the initials. I'm in linings. I see everything people forget to hide. That got his attention. What did you see? Hand-finished seams. Expensive fabric. Smoke in the wool. Salt at the hem. A torn cuff from someone grabbing it hard. Not normal wear. Dante leaned back. Anything else? The person who brought it in wore cheap gloves. Enzo's head turned. Nora looked between them. What? Dante's voice went very still. My driver was supposed to bring that coat to our private cleaner in Midtown. He didn't. A man in a brown delivery jacket dropped it off 2 nights ago. Paid cash. Kept looking at the cameras. Enzo was already moving. Dante stared at Nora. You remember his gloves? I remember wrong things. Why? Because wrong things ruin clothes. It should have sounded silly. It did not. In Dante's world, wrong things ruin lives. By noon, Enzo had pulled the laundry footage. By 1, he had found the man in the brown delivery jacket entering through a service garage used by Bellandy drivers. By 2, the man had a name. Gavin Brooks, head of rotating route security. One of Dante's own. Nora learned none of that from Dante. She learned it because Ivy refused to nap unless Nora sat beside her bed, and the walls of old mills carried sound through pipes. That evening, Brooks came to the safe house. He wore a navy suit and the expression of a man who knew which faces to look worried in front of. Nora saw him from the second-floor corridor as he crossed the main room below. Cheap gloves, different color, same stiff fingers. Her stomach dropped. Brooks looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition moved through his face before he could hide it. Nora stepped back from the railing. Too late. Ivy was in the laundry room. Of course, the old textile mill had a laundry room. A real one, clean and industrial, with steam presses, folding tables, and rows of uniforms for the men who pretended not to bleed. Ivy liked the sound of the dryers. She sat on a folded blanket near the warm machines while Nora mended a tear in the blue apron. Yellow thread again? Nora asked. Ivy nodded. Good choice. Yellow is stubborn. The door opened behind them. Nora knew before she looked. Brooks stepped inside. Miss Hale. Nora set down the needle. This room is occupied. Mr. Bellandy asked me to escort the child downstairs. Ivy went still. Nora smiled. It felt strange on her face. No, he didn't. Brooks's polite expression thinned. You've been here one day. You do not know what he asks. I know he doesn't send men who scare his daughter. Brooks glanced at Ivy. The child's hands had vanished in Nora's apron pocket. You saw me, he said. Nora stood slowly, placing herself between him and Ivy. I see a lot. Then you should have learned to look away. His hand moved inside his jacket. Nora grabbed the wet sheet from the pressing table and snapped it open with both arms. The white cloth billowed like a sail between them. Brooks fired. The shot tore through cotton and steam. Nora yanked the steam lever with her elbow. A hot white cloud exploded from the press. Brooks cursed, blind for half a second. Half a second was work time. Nora shoved the rolling hamper into his legs. He staggered. She grabbed the long metal pole used for hanging finished suits and drove the hooked end into his wrist. The gun dropped into a basket of wet towels. Ivy under the table. The child moved. Brooks lunged through the steam and caught Nora by the throat. His fingers closed hard enough to blacken the edges of the room. You should have stayed a nobody, he hissed. Nora brought her knee up between his legs. He folded. The door slammed open. Dante entered with Enzo behind him. The sight of Nora bent over the table, gasping, with Brooks on the floor and Ivy under the folding table wearing the blue apron, did something terrible to his face. Brooks tried to speak. Dante kicked the gun basket away, then looked at Nora. Did he touch the child? Nora shook her head. Her voice came out broken. No. Dante nodded once. Then he lifted Brooks by the collar and drove him into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Nora turned Ivy's face into her shoulder before Dante's men took over. The violence lasted less than 10 seconds. That was enough. Later, in the quiet after the guards changed and the mill's old pipes stopped clanging, Dante found Nora washing her hands in the laundry sink. Her throat was bruised. He saw it. She saw him see it. Don't, she said. Don't what? Look like that. Like what? Like you're deciding how many pieces to cut him into. Dante's hands flexed once at his sides. You stopped him with a sheet. Wet cotton is heavier than people think. And a laundry pole, also heavier than people think. His mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Something too injured to be called that. You saved her again. I saved myself too. Good. She looked up at him then. That word had not been praise. It had been respect. It unsettled her more than his threats. Brooks gave Orloff my daughter's route, Dante said. He also gave them Bellamy, Washington. Because of the coat. Because of the coat. So the coat was bait. Yes. Nora dried her hands on a towel. You used my workplace. I did not know the route had been compromised. But you sent something dangerous through a place full of people who don't have armored cars. Dante took that without flinching. Yes. If I had died, I would have owed you a debt I could never repay. That is not an answer. No, he said. It is not. For the first time, he looked less like a man defending a kingdom and more like one standing in the wreckage of his own decisions. Nora did not forgive him, but she believed he understood the cost. That night, Ivy fell asleep holding Nora's hand and Dante's cuff. One on each side. In sleep, she pulled them together. Neither adult moved for a long time. After Ivy slept, Nora followed Dante into a room the old mill had never been meant to hold. It sat behind a steel door on the third floor, where the river wind pressed against the windows and made the glass hum. Inside were shelves of folded children's clothes, label boxes, and one small cedar chest set beneath a lamp. The air smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Nora stopped at the threshold. "If this is private, I don't need to see it." "It is private," Dante said. "That is why you need to see it." He opened the cedar chest. Inside lay a child's red scarf, a pair of tiny black shoes, 3 picture books, and a square of cream wool blanket folded with painful precision. Nora knew that kind of folding. Not neatness. Grief. "Her mother?" she asked. "Sarah," Dante said. The name changed his face. "Not much, but enough. She bought that blanket in Florence before Ivy was born. She said every child needed one thing that smelled like home." Nora looked down at the cream wool. "Does Ivy use it?" "She did. Before. Before." That one word held the whole house. Dante lifted the blanket, and something small slipped from one corner. Nora caught it before it hit the floor. A laundry tag. White cotton. Faded ink. Handwritten initials. IB. Nora rubbed the edge between her fingers. This was washed wrong. Dante looked at her. "What?" "Not recently. A long time ago." "Well, blanket, but someone used heat. See this edge? It tightened. Someone tried to soften it afterward with lavender. Too much." His stillness changed. "Our housekeeper said it had been cleaned after the attack." "By who?" "Brooks arranged it." Nora turned the tag over. The back side held a pinprick of rust-colored stain no larger than a freckle. "He missed something." Dante took one step closer. "Blood, maybe. Or rust. Or both. I can't tell here." He reached for it. Nora closed her hand. "No." His eyes lifted. "No. You take it, and this becomes evidence in your world. Men vanish. Rooms get locked. Everyone starts bleeding before anyone thinks. You think I am incapable of thinking. I think you are very good at thinking after you decide who deserves pain." The words landed hard. He looked at the closed fist around the tag. "What would you do?" "I would compare it to every laundry tag in this house. Blankets, uniforms, coats, sheets. People who handle laundry leave systems. They use the same knots, the same ink, the same mistakes." Dante was silent. You can find a killer in a laundry tag. You can find who touched what when they thought it didn't matter. For a long moment, the river pushed wind against the windows. Then Dante said, "Teach Enzo." Nora blinked. "What?" "Teach Enzo what to look for. Teach Mrs. Vale. Teach whoever you choose. I will not let another man like Brooks stand between my daughter and the truth, because I only knew how to read threats written in bullets." The quiet in the room changed. Nora had expected command. She had not expected humility. "Not from him. I don't know if I can find anything," she said. "You already did." He looked at the blanket, and this time the grief in him did not harden into rage. It stayed grief. That frightened her more. "When Sarah died," he said, "I held Ivy for 6 hours. She did not cry. She did not sleep. She only stared at my mouth as if she was waiting for me to say a word that would put the world back together." Nora's throat tightened. "And did you?" "No." His voice broke on the edge of the word. "I gave orders. I raised weapons. I made men fear the sound of my name. I did everything except give my child a word she could live inside." Nora opened her hand and placed the laundry tag on top of the folded blanket. Maybe she found one. Dante looked at her. "Mama is not a small word." "No," Nora said. "It isn't. That is why we let her decide what it means." He nodded slowly, and for the first time since Nora had met him, Dante Bellandi did not look like a man trying to control the room. He looked like a father waiting outside a closed door, hoping the child inside would let him in. The public test came 6 days later. Dante could not keep Nora hidden after Brooks. Hiding her made her look like a witness. A witness could be stolen, bought, or buried. A protected member of the Bellandi house was harder to touch. "Absolutely not," Nora said. They were in Dante's office, an old drafting room with steel windows and maps of the city pinned behind glass. "You do not know what I am asking. You are asking me to stand in front of people who solve problems with knives and pretend I belong there. No pretending. I fold sheets for a living. You folded one into a weapon. That does not make me Mafia. I do not want you Mafia. The sharpness in his voice stopped her. Dante stood behind his desk, hands flat on the steel surface. I want them to understand that touching you brings my full response. I want them to understand that Ivy's voice is not a rumor they can exploit. I want them looking at me, not searching for you in the dark. And what do I have to be? Ivy's guardian. The word landed carefully. Not nanny. Not hostage. Not girlfriend. Guardian. Nora folded her arms. Guardian comes with rules. Name them. I don't lie to her. Agreed. I don't let anyone call me her mother in front of her unless she chooses it. Dante's jaw tightened. Agreed. I keep my own name. Obviously. And if I say a room is wrong, you listen before someone starts shooting. The corner of his mouth changed. That one may save lives. That one is non-negotiable. Agreed. The event was not a gala. Nora would have laughed if anyone called it one. It was the Bellandy Winter Drive, held every December in the Old Garment Workers' Hall on Canal Street. The public story said Dante's foundation collected coats for families who could not afford heat. The private truth was that every crew, supplier, fixer, debt holder, and rival with business in Lower Manhattan came to be seen, weighed, warned, or forgiven. Rows of winter coats hung from portable racks beneath faded murals of seamstresses and factorymen. Volunteers moved between folding tables. Children picked hats from bins. Outside, Bellandy men watched every door. Nora stood near the sorting table wearing black trousers, a cream sweater, and a blue apron. Dante had offered to replace it. Ivy had refused, so the apron stayed. Dante arrived in a black overcoat with Ivy holding his left hand. His right remained free. Nora noticed that. Everyone noticed that. He crossed the hall toward her with the calm of a man who knew every whisper had already bent toward him. Miss Hale, he said. Nora heard the room listen. Mr. Bellandy. Ivy let go of his hand and went to Nora. The room did more than listen now. It watched. Dante turned to the people gathered beneath the old murals. Nora Hale is under Bellandy protection. She is my daughter's guardian. Any debt owed to her is owed through me. Any insult offered to her is answered by me. Nora kept her chin level. She had faced worse rooms. Hospital billing offices. Landlords. Men who thought a woman folding shirts at midnight had no one to call. Then Victor Orloff stepped forward. He was younger than Nora expected. Blonde, polished, with the empty smile of a man who enjoyed choosing where pain landed. He picked a gray wool coat from the donation rack and brushed invisible lint from the sleeve. A laundry girl, he said. How sentimental. Dante did not move. Nora felt the danger in that stillness. She stepped forward before he could speak. Careful with that coat, she said. Orloff's pale eyes slid to her. Excuse me, you are rubbing the wool the wrong way. A few people nearby went very still. Orloff smiled. Is that so? Men like you always think stains disappear because servants do the washing. His smile thinned. Nora took the coat from his hands before he could decide whether to let her. She turned the sleeve inside out and held up the lining. But stains leave maps. Cheap cologne, gun oil, cigarette ash, fear. She looked at him. You should change cleaners. A low sound moved through the room. Not laughter. Worse. Recognition. Orloff's face hardened. Dante came to stand beside Nora, not in front of her. That mattered. Victor, he said softly, do not touch anything in this hall again unless you are prepared to lose the hand. Orloff's eyes moved from Dante to Nora to Ivy, who stood behind Nora gripping the apron pocket. Enjoy your charity, he said. He walked away. Nora exhaled only after he turned his back. Dante leaned close enough that only she heard him. You just insulted an Orloff in front of half the city. He started it. He did. Was I supposed to let him? No. The answer came too quickly. Nora looked at him. Dante's eyes were not cold now. They were bright with something that made her pulse unsteady. No, he repeated. You were not. That was when Ivy tugged the apron. Nora looked down. Ivy pointed across the hall. 3 volunteers in white shirts were carrying garment bags toward the rear corridor. Nothing strange there. The whole hall was full of donated coats moving from rack to room. Except the tall volunteer on the left held his bag too stiffly. Not like cloth. Like weight. The second had cuffs too clean for a man, hauling winter donations through old dust. The third wore gloves. Not winter gloves. Work gloves. Cheap brown leather. Nora's skin went cold. Wrong things ruin clothes. Wrong things also kill people. Enzo, she said. He was at her side before she finished the word. The garment bags. His eyes moved. Dante was already turning toward the rear corridor where Orloff had vanished. Nora saw the path before anyone else did. The volunteers were not heading to the sorting room. They were moving toward the old steam service hallway that cut behind the stage, the same hallway Dante would use if someone called him aside privately. Dante, he stopped at her voice. That was new too. 1 second of obedience. It saved him. The first shot came through a hanging row of coats instead of his back. The hall erupted. People screamed. Coats fell. Enzo shoved Ivy behind a table and drew his weapon. Dante pulled Nora down behind a rolling rack as bullets tore through wool and canvas above them. Nora hit the floor hard. Her hand landed on a box of wire hangers. Of all ridiculous things, a man with a blade came through the coats, fast and low, heading for Dante while he returned fire toward the rear doorway. Nora saw the angle. Dante did not. There was no time to shout. Nora grabbed 3 wire hangers in one fist and lunged. The blade came down. She looped the twisted metal around the attacker's wrist and yanked with both hands. The hanger bit. The knife shifted offline, slicing through Dante's sleeve instead of his throat. Dante turned. Nora pulled again, using every ounce of strength she had built dragging wet hotel sheets out of industrial washers. The attacker stumbled. Dante struck once, controlled and brutal, and the man went down. Steam burst from the old service pipe behind the stage. Someone had cut it open. White vapor rolled through the hall, thick and hot. Panic swelled. Nora saw Ivy. The child had crawled under the sorting table, the blue apron pocket clenched in one fist. A second attacker moved toward her through the steam, gun low, face covered by a volunteer mask. Nora grabbed the nearest garment rack and shoved it hard. It rolled through the fog, heavy with winter coats, gathering speed down the slope floor. It slammed into the attacker's knees and drove him into the wall. Enzo reached him a heartbeat later. Ivy. Nora ran through steam so hot it stung her cheeks. Dante caught her arm. Down. She's there. I see her. Then move. He did. They reached the table together. Ivy crawled out and threw herself at Nora. Dante put his body over both of them as another burst of gunfire chewed through the stage curtains. Nora looked up through the steam. Orloff stood near the rear door with a small pistol in his hand. He was not aiming at Dante. He was aiming at Ivy. Nora moved before thought. She tore the blue apron off and snapped it open between Ivy and the gun. A stupid shield. A useless piece of cloth. But Dante moved with it. The cloth blocked Orloff's view for one breath. Dante used that breath. He fired once. Orloff dropped the pistol and fell against the doorframe, alive, screaming, and finished. Silence returned in pieces. First the gunfire stopped. Then the shouting. Then the steam alarms. Nora found herself kneeling on the floor with Ivy in her lap, and Dante crouched in front of them, one hand pressed to a cut on his shoulder, the other wrapped around the torn edge of Nora's apron. The apron had a bullet hole through the pocket. Yellow thread dangled from it. Ivy touched the hole. Her face crumpled. "Mama," she whispered. Nora's breath caught. Ivy looked at Dante. Then she did something she had not done in a year. She reached for him too. "Daddy." Dante closed his eyes. The gun in his hand lowered to the floor. Not because he had to, because his daughter had asked for both of them with one breath. Nora watched his fingers open. The weapon lay on the dusty floor between fallen coats and spent shells. Dante Belandi, who never lowered a weapon once he raised it, let it go. The winter drive did not continue. No one pretended charity could happen over bullet holes. By dawn, the Orloff network in the city had been pulled out by its roots. Not by speeches, not by public spectacle, by ledgers, names, debts called in, doors closed, and men who had chosen the wrong little girl to aim at. Nora did not ask for details. Dante did not offer them. That was one of the first ways they learned how to be honest. 3 days later, Bellamy wash reopened. Nora insisted. The front window had been replaced. The sign still buzzed. Half the letters still died after midnight. The rolling cart had a dent in its front frame from the night. Everything changed. Dante wanted to buy the building. Nora said no. Dante wanted to replace the machines. Nora said one machine at a time. Dante wanted to post 6 men inside. Nora allowed 2 outside and 1 pretending badly to read a magazine near the vending machine. Enzo took the magazine job personally. Ivy sat on the folding counter wearing the blue apron. Nora had patched the bullet hole with yellow cloth from an old scarf. It looked ridiculous. It looked perfect. Dante stood near dryer number 4. Too large and too dangerous for the fluorescent room. You know, Nora said, folding a towel, you can sit. I am sitting. Leaning against a dryer like you're guarding a vault is not sitting. Ivy patted the counter beside her. Dante obeyed. He sat on the folding counter in his black suit, one knee bent, looking like the laundry might collapse from the insult of holding him. Nora laughed before she could stop herself. His head turned. What? Nothing. That was not nothing. You look like a crime lord in detention. Enzo made a noise behind his magazine. Dante looked at him. The magazine rose higher. Ivy smiled. Not the small, careful smile from the safe house. A real one. Then she took the cloth rabbit from her lap and placed it in Nora's rolling laundry cart. Nora stilled. Ivy. The girl smoothed one floppy ear. Rabbit wants a bath. Her voice was soft, but it was there. Dante stopped breathing. Nora did too. Ivy looked from one adult to the other, puzzled by their faces. Mama makes things clean again, she said. Nora put one hand over her mouth. Dante bowed his head, not in defeat, in surrender, the kind that did not diminish a man, the kind that returned him to himself. Later, after Ivy fell asleep in the office on a pile of warm towels, Dante found Nora by the dryers. She was folding the last load with slow, careful hands. She chose the word. Nora said before he could speak. I know. I didn't ask for it. I know. I won't replace her mother. No one could. Nora looked up. Dante's face was tired, cut, bruised, and more open than she had ever seen it. But there is room, he said, for more than one kind of love in a child's life. The dryers turned behind them, warm and steady. Is that what you're asking me? Nora whispered. I'm asking you to stay. Not as a hostage. Not as a debt. Not because I can make the world dangerous without me. He took a breath. For once, he looked almost afraid. Stay because Ivy sleeps when your apron is on the chair. Stay because you see wrong things before they kill us. Stay because when you tell me to stop, I stop. Nora's eyes burned. You are a terrifying man, Dante Bellandy. Yes. You still scare me. Good. Her eyebrows lifted. Good. Fear tells the truth. I would rather earn your trust slowly than have you mistake comfort for safety. That was not the answer she expected. It was better. She stepped closer and touched the tear in his sleeve where the knife had missed his throat. This needs mending. His gaze dropped to her fingers. Can be fixed? Most things can, she said, if you catch the damage before it spreads. Dante covered her hand with his. No command. No ownership. Only warmth. Then teach me. Nora looked through the office window at Ivy asleep under clean towels, the blue apron folded beneath her cheek. Home, she was beginning to understand, was not always a place someone gave you. Sometimes it was a room you cleaned after violence. Sometimes it was a child who spoke when everyone thought silence had won. Sometimes it was the most dangerous man in the city lowering his weapon because a little girl called you mama. Nora turned her hand under Dante's and laced their fingers together. One machine at a time, she said. His mouth curved. One machine at a time. And if a silent child grabbed your apron in a room full of guns and gave you a name you were not ready to carry, would you run from it? Or would you stay long enough to learn whether love can make even the most dangerous man put the weapon down? Tell us which moment stayed with you. Subscribe for the next Boss Love Storylines episode.